everybody. It's 2025, I think. I'm assuming I'm right. So give me a nod, William, if I'm right. Is it 2025?
It is, according
already
to one calendar.
That's right. Yeah. Depending on where you are in universe, I suppose, too.
I like other calendars in which it's like 5010 or something.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But yes.
Okay. Whatever it is, we're back, and we've been away a little bit for a little bit of time, but that doesn't matter. So please subscribe and make comments, depending on what's going on here. That would be great. And I'm Todd Hayen, and this is William Impey over here on my right. And I have my website up, and so does William, has his up. These are our, there's William's email address if you want to write to him and say hello and set up a session if you're interested. And here is, I'll give you a second to write that down. It is a little long, but it's not too complicated. And here I am. So we'll get going in a minute. We're just going to have a little clip here that we'll play like we usually do just to get us going. A little bit of a incentive or enticement to have some things to say. So here we go. This is also from Danielle Haig. You can check out her website. She has a lot of really cool things to say. And we'll just play this and then get to it.
Don't ruin it by doing this. Don't neutralize a man's generous, protective, and cherishing nature by giving back in equal measure or prioritizing his feelings above your own. A masculine man falls in love through giving, not receiving. In fact, it's good for you to feel indebted to him at times because that often fosters a deeper sense of appreciation and respect. This in turn makes you more open and receptive to his generosity, which leads to a deeper connection.
Okay, William, I'm sorry I didn't get you to say who you are and what you are. I'm totally confused because of the new year. So give us a little bit of background on you.
Are you restarting?
Yeah, right. No, we're not going to restart. We're just going to stir the pot a little bit.
Be existential counselor, shamanic practitioner, medicine guide, lover of all things shamanic and weird and esoteric.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I can't follow that because I'm just boring.
You're a breather.
I'm a breather. What is that?
I think it was it Marcel Duchamp? And they're like, "What are you up to these days?" And he goes, "Like, yeah, I'm just being a breather."
Ah, is that like being a useless eater?
No. I think it's like his point is that like I'm not. I'm like delighting in the fact that I'm like offering nothing to the world. I'm taking nothing, offering nothing. I'm just sitting here breathing.
So is that what I'm doing? Offering nothing to the world?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Todd.
Well, I think that's true.
On the good side, you don't take. You just breathe.
That's right. Breathing's not taking. Anyway, that's our little clip. You want to lead off with your thoughts?
Yeah, it's great. And, I think it's funny how these very obvious and simple things tend to sort of get lost for a lot of women or people holding the feminine in relationship. It's really, really basic and true. And I think a lot of men hear that and it's like a breath of relief. It's like, oh, right. Yeah. Like I really do feel good when I feel needed. If you look at the crisis in masculinity and you look at why is it that men commit suicide and there's like incels and this huge crisis. I mean, a huge part of it is this feeling of not being needed.
I agree. But why is that? The first thing that comes to mind is like, couldn't you say this about women as well? Where this is ManTalk, so we're really more talking about these things from a male perspective. And of course, Danielle is doing that as well. Mm-hmm. She's telling women to be careful and blah, blah, blah. Why is this different? Why is it that the male system, or I should say the constellated masculine archetypes in whatever being it might be. I mean, it doesn't have to be a gendered biological male. Why is that different? Why is this need for acceptance and need for giving as opposed to receiving. So different with men and women. I mean, it's not that different, but it is different.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know that there's a good answer. I mean, because when you look at it from an archetypal perspective, like, why is it that the masculine archetype, or that the feminine looks to the masculine for presence, protection, provision? Why? I don't know.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't know. I mean,
starting from, it's plainly obvious to anyone who's willing to look that that's the case, and so how do we act accordingly, right?
Yeah, but and you could get obvious too, which might be a bit over the top. But to say that men are the ones that do send out, as far as the sexual act, it's like they're impregnating, they're sending something. Yeah, exactly. Penetrating, and also senders as opposed to receivers, where women are receiving sperm and creating from that, whatever. I mean, so, you could get into that.
And the target.
Yeah, and you see that all through culture. The whole phallic symbol, the whole idea of men fighting with swords, that they go into a material manipulation, and it's always to go in there and manipulate the material as opposed to just being. It's always about penetrating and going into. I think
maybe your masculine was reacting to me saying that you're a breather. It's like, hey, no, I can penetrate the world.
That's right. And that's a good point. Of course, nobody watching this knows what we're talking. Yeah, nobody knows what we're talking about, because that was before we went on. That was pre-air, wasn't it? When you were talking about breathing.
I think I did.
Oh, okay. Well, that just goes to show you where my head is. And I think it's important that these things, this is something that I know it sounds a bit odd, but I do think there's something to it. I think there is this idea in a very fundamental, basic way that women, or the feminine, I should say, are natural creators. They do not need to. They need to receive something in order to create life. Okay, but they don't need to manipulate matter, because they do that naturally. It's a natural function of their biology to create matter. And I think that men, or the masculine, have always had an issue historically with finding their place in the material existence, in the material world, by manipulating it in some way, which is the idea of penetration, of penetrating the material world in order to manipulate it and in order to have control over it. Now that's going kind of far away from what Danielle was talking about.
No, not really. I think I'm with you. In fact, what I was thinking of when you were saying that was, something, a topic very dear to my heart, which is the persecution of witches. I can't even say it without getting teary. What is it that was threatening to them? Look, you can come at this from some sort of critique of patriarchy, in which it's just a foregone conclusion that the masculine and its shadow are the same thing, and there's something inherently evil about men. Or you can say, look, when the male establishment saw that women didn't need them anymore, that were healing without them, that were taking care of themselves, that were connecting, they got nervous. Yeah, from an ego perspective, they wanted to be in control. They wanted to have a monopoly on things like healing, for example. But also on a heart level, they're challenged by the idea that, oh my God, there's a woman in the woods that's going to teach women how to carve a dildo, and then she's going to fuck herself and she doesn't need me. Where does that leave me? I got to put a stop to this. And so it's from a wounded place of feeling like, oh my God, you're not going to need me anymore. It's also from a place, a toxic place of wanting to be in control and dominate and to hold on to power. But I think also on a heart level, it's still there.
I think that's a really,
if women don't need it. And I think that's one of the problems. It's very funny, feminism had to happen, and yet it had to happen in a way in which there was going to be collateral damage. Well, part of the collateral damage is that men also see it as this threat to, oh, you don't need me. You don't need me to provide. You can make your own money. You don't need me. Now, from the feminine perspective, it's like, I need to know that I can make my own money so that I'm not beholden to some abusive asshole who I can't leave because, you know, he's got his hand on the purse strings, right? If I make my own money, I'm free. I can leave if he's abusive. But from the wounded masculine perspective, it's like, oh, if women are now given the opportunity to empower themselves in that way, they literally don't need me. Right. And so now you look at this whole concept of where there's this disconnect where people are not having children. Women make their own money. They don't need to put up with men. You know, men have porn. They don't need to put up with women. And there's this like siloing. And
oh yeah. Well, this is the
hearts are breaking in this whole thing because no one, or not no one, but like there's this huge discrepancy between how much love and physical contact and valuing and appreciating. It's just not happening. And I think it's really a massive contributor to like the just general sense of suffering that.
Yeah. Well, you're talking, the way is listening to you. It's like if I could draw a graph, you know, you're when you're talking about making money and the threat of the feminine taking away the masculine's purpose in life or whatever, you're up here on what would be considered a very pragmatic, say materialist level. And then when you start talking about need and believing as the masculine that you're needed, you start talking about love and you're talking about that connection, not having family or whatever, then you're going deeper into a more spiritual, say, lack of a better word. But going back to the material part of it, I think, and going back to the witches and to the patriarch and whatever, I think men or the masculine, and I'm going to just say men just to make it easier, okay? Because you don't have to be a gendered male or a biological male to be affected by the masculine archetypes. But anyway, men at that time that started to feel the threat, as you're talking about, with the feminine. But it's because they became obsessed with the material manipulation of the world, in my view. And they began to believe that the material world was the end all, that that's what it was all about, that there really wasn't anything else. And if you lost control of the material world, you essentially have lost control, period. End of story. And I think that once women started to show a threat to that women could manipulate the material world as well by their witchcraft or whatever they might be doing, or anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be witchcraft. That was just one little blip in the whole process. They become a threat. And the problem wasn't so much that men became obsessed with, well, that was the problem, became obsessed with the material world as being the end all. But it was that movement away from the true meaning of physical existence, which isn't material. It's about love, and it's about creating a union with another person in order to see God, or whatever words you want to use. Yeah. And that's where the problem has been, and it's been with us for a couple of thousand years at the least. And I think it's reaching a certain zenith in our culture now, in our contemporary culture, with the radical feminine movement and these other things that we're seeing. And it's not just that. I mean, the male part of it is a problem as well. This isn't, obviously. I mean, that's how it started.
God, I'm getting so much trouble for saying this, but you know, women and men both are contributing equally. Sorry, hate me if you want, but that's the facts.
Hate you for which part of that? Is that it's not all?
It is absolutely, totally, and completely okay to rip the masculine to shreds and to critique it viciously.
How about ripping the feminine to shreds? Can we do that too?
That's when people do not like to hear it, and I've seen it a million times. Yeah. But hey, your point is a good one. And I was actually thinking about Mary Shelley Wollstonecraft, you know, and she's the one that writes Frankenstein. She's the one that bears witness to, do you guys see what you're doing here and where this is fucking leading? This masculine urge in the shadow to manipulate and play God with the material world is going to end fucking badly. And I think it took a woman like her, I don't even know if she's proto-feminist. I mean, she may be I don't know, what do the kids call it? OG? She's like the OG feminist.
Well, you could just say she was
proto-feminist, and then she's like,
conscious.
Yeah. Anyway,
she's conscious of reality. It's not even a feminist thing. It's more that she was conscious of reality, of what was really going on.
But I think like that's the thing, and I mean, I think I think it's men who are even more susceptible to being lost in the Cartesian nightmare, and I think it's like it takes that perspective. You know, there's that great line in the new show Yellowstone, where Beth says it's a woman's job to give a man perspective. And it's weird because it's like that show is supposed to be kind of radically conservative in its way of approaching things, sort of like, you know, provoke the lefties and make them nervous. But I'm like, I don't know, that seems profoundly kind of archetypally true.
Well, I hate to say this, I'll get killed. I'll get killed for saying this.
Yeah.
But as the right and conservative paradigm is in today's culture right now, I think is closer to quote unquote truth than the other way around. I think the woke culture and the far left, it doesn't even have to be far left. I think they're further away from what's really substantially real. And I think that comment is, you know, I do think the conservative mindset, I'm not talking about people or so much the conservative group as it is just a conservative worldview, I think is more in alignment with the archetypal truths or even the spiritual truth of the differences between the masculine and the feminine, and what is positive and useful and you know, shows strength in either one of those groups. You know, we don't want to put them in the same category and say they're the same. Of course, that's the big argument. They're equal in value, but they're not the same by any means. And I think that statement is a true statement. That is, the feminine balances out the masculine, and vice versa. The masculine balances the feminine as well. It's like either one of them on their own isn't going to be of any great use in the material world.
Either one on its own is nothingness.
Is nothingness, absolutely.
To your point, though, you know, recently I saw an interview with Judith Butler, you know, the author of Gender Trouble. I mean, a fucking brilliant piece of gender theory back in, I think it was the late 90s that she wrote that. Anyway, you know, you would think that she's up there with like the Camille Pagulas of the world in sort of driving the insanity from an academic perspective that you're talking about, where there's this just, you know, massive break in the mind. And she's actually sane. They put it to her in some interview, this issue that, you know, we're now facing. You know, so the interviewer says something to her like, "Did you ever see this coming?" Or like, "You know, what did you think?" And she was like, "Well, you know, obviously not." But her perspective on, for example, assigned male at birth, people participating in women's sports, she's opposed to it. And I'm like, when I heard that, I'm like, thank fucking God. I almost was like, thank God I can like Judith Butler again. Because I was almost worried that if I was to like go back and hear that she had broken from reality, that she had made that mistake that fucking Kierkegaard warned of forever, you know, 400 years ago. Don't cut the tether between your transcendence and your immanence. You know, that she's fucking grounded in reality, and still I don't even know what her pronouns are. Her, sure. Like that she's the godmother of this whole concept of gender performativity, you know, which of course starts with Simone de Beauvoir, but like she takes it to this next level. It's almost sort of against maybe your point, but it's like refreshing. I'm like, oh, thank God. The left is not completely nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not that familiar. I'm not familiar at all with her. I should check into it a bit.
I wonder, and if you're a fan of obscurantism, you will love it, because it's like you read a page of Judith Butler and you go, what? Read it again and you go, what?
Remember, I'm just a breather, right?
Like, okay, I think I got it now.
I don't pay a lot of attention to any of that because I'm just a breather, remember?
You're just a breather.
I mean, I'm just a breather.
This is why I always encourage people, try to read Heidegger. If you can try to get through book 1 of Being in Nothingness, you'll be forever changed. And then you will read someone like Judith Butler and you'll be like, piece of fucking cake.
Yeah.
Parsing complicated text, I swear, will be the one thing, the one skill that people will take into the future, and it will be the most valuable thing, because attention deficit is the sort of the way of being now. If you can read a dense text and actually come out of it and explain it simply to somebody, you have a gift that 50 years from now, no one will be able to do that, man.
I doubt it. I don't know if they could now. We used to do a thing in university and graduate school of close reading, where we would take like a paragraph or even a couple of sentences of somebody like Carl Jung or any philosopher, and just break it down word by word. And you could write 10 pages on a paragraph when you do that kind of close reading. And it does, obviously you can't read, you could read a whole book that way, but it would take quite a bit of time.
Well, that's what universities are for.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's why it takes a whole semester to get through one book of Heidegger.
Well, I'm sure it does.
Half of the major text.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
This is an interesting thing too, and I think partly what's not lost on us in this conversation is that what we're talking about is a function of the masculine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Parsing complicated text. But
well,
why do you think that AI can't do that though? And it's because AI is, and this is, I'm opening up whole new territory here. One of the things about AI that's very chilling is that it's so completely and totally void of the feminine. There's no feeling function. It's pure masculine, clear, cold, detached intelligence with no heart. And I
never thought of it that way, but you're right. You're right on the nose with that. Yeah.
But I think, and what is that a call toward? It's that, well, you're not going to do anything about it, but what you can meet it with is, now this is a call to actually wake everybody up to the necessity to integrate the feminine. If we cannot, especially as men, if we cannot get in touch with our feeling function, if we cannot get into the intuitive, into the nurturing, into the irrational, a function of the feminine, not of women, if we can't get into that space, we're going to be bowled over by AI. But if we can meet it with something that it can never give, which is heart, which is the feminine, which is all those things I just said, I think the world has a fighting chance of survival. But it's a wake-up call for everyone to start really recognizing the fact that the way in which the feminine is still feared and maligned needs to be worked through. And also, to your point, that the way that we're going about it right now is not working.
No, because it's not looking at the problem. It's the problem it thinks it's looking at is not the problem. Yeah. Women, having the same job opportunities, being CEOs of big corporations, those are all masculine functions. They're not to say they're functions only men can do. I'm not saying that. It's
they require you to repress the feminine.
That's exactly right.
Apathy, right?
Right. And that's not the problem. That isn't about the problem. But anyway, just for the hell of it, I'm sure we'll still go down this track, but just for the hell of it, let me go back just a second to what Danielle is saying, from a relationship point of view, like a romantic relationship. Okay, we're getting very broad, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that.
You can blame me.
I know, and it's fine. It's fine. But let me just touch back again on this relationship idea, just to kind of narrow it down into a tinier little hole to look through. This idea of say heterosexual couple, just to make it easier to talk about. This can apply to any coupling, where you have a man and a woman, and you have the woman who is essentially constellating more of the feminine archetypes than not. And you have a male that is constellating more of the masculine archetypes than not. There are a variety of different groupings in this. So I'm not trying to say anything that's controversial. I'm just kind of narrowing it down to the center of this bell curve. Okay, so you have a situation where you will have this coupling. And then Danielle is saying, if you're the woman in the coupling, to be sure to understand that the man's one of his primary archetypal thrusts and push is to be the giver, and is to be the one that is known in that coupling as the giver. Talk a little bit about that, just as a relationship. How does that work? What does it look like what are the pitfalls that happen as a result of not following that advice or following it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the core of Polarity's teaching. It often is confused with by promulgators of it and people that are not listening carefully, is that it's this belief that it has something to do with what's between your legs. And it drives me insane. This is Polarity teaching, what she's saying. She's saying that anyone who's constellating the masculine is dominant in that, needs to feel potent in their capacity to provide. If you unconsciously rob that person of that capacity, they will wither and die in the relationship. Now, I think what she's trying to point out is that it's well intentioned, that you're trying to be the provider and take care of him and give him what he needs, but it's like she's pointing out that it's unintentionally creating this in him or whomever is carrying this.
Right.
Which I think is a really important thing to take in. It doesn't mean that women can't be providers, and it doesn't mean that all men need to provide to feel good. It just means that, like, if you see yourself stepping on your male partner's capacity to provide for you and it's not working for you, this might be why.
Exactly.
Now, if it's working for you,
fine.
Hallelujah. You don't need polarity teaching. You don't need a couples counselor. You don't need an existential counselor. You don't need a therapist. Everything's fine. Good. Go out and enjoy your life. But if things break down, polarity teachings goes, can we just come back to some grounding, some fundamentals here?
Mm-hmm.
And my point about Kierkegaard before, he was talking about this way back when, 1600. He's like, you have the freedom to transcend your givens with the body that you have. And in fact, I think he even goes so far as to say it's kind of your imperative to sort of make the most of the gift that God has given you. He was Christian. The gift that God has given you to do that, to transcend what you're given. And he uses the example, I think, of, look, if you are given a male body and you identify as a woman, you can transcend what's between your legs and you can present yourself in that way. And then he makes the next move that makes him a fucking genius. He goes, you can transcend the imminent, don't cut the cord. And what cutting the cord looks like is you denying that you were born with male genitalia and trying to pretend, because you cut the cord, it's like a helium balloon. You cut the cord and now you were adrift and unmoored in nihilism. And that's what we did. There's this collective cutting of the cord, and everyone goes, why is the helium balloon drifting off into the ether and terrifying everybody in the helium balloon looking down going, we're not anchored anymore. And it's like, because we don't. And so this polarity teachings is, can we anchor again in something fundamental and basic in these underlying fundamental archetypal truths?
You're getting
in the helium balloon. Fine, go for it. But
you're getting into some pretty cool stuff here that, I mean, anytime we move into the gray, that's when it becomes really interesting, because we don't really have answers to it. We can make very broad strokes and know that we're covering the essentials, to like the comment that Danielle makes. Okay. That's a really broad stroke, and it doesn't apply to everyone. It doesn't even apply in principle to individual. There's a whole gray thing, and what you're commenting on here is where we get into this gray idea of, you don't have to, you can transcend what you're given. I think that's essentially what you're saying. And let's just go back again to this idea of the male constellating the masculine archetypes of being the provider, and if he's with a partner that never lets that happen, okay, and let's say it works, let's say he's fine and everything goes well, quote unquote, but is it really going as well as it could go? And I think that's when you run into the problem of just like saying, hey, if it works, leave it alone. And I don't necessarily, and this is me personally, I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think just because it works and just because things are okay, then it's okay. I mean, we always have potential. We always have room to go forward and to become better, quote unquote. You know, what does better mean? I mean, anyway, and you see couples that have been together, say, for 35 years, and they worked it out, and the guy's very passive, and she's the provider, and she's constellating all the masculine archetypes, and he's not. And they're still together, but are they really as good as they could be? Now, you run into problems with this. Obviously, you run into the whole superior race concept, you know, like Hitler had. It's like the Aryan race is the best. And
yeah, sure.
The Ubermensch, the whole idea of, oh, you can be better than you appear to be. And it's like, so this is why gray areas are tough, because I'm not advocating that. I'm not saying that a couple that's doing really well, yet you have this disparity, you have this imbalance. They didn't do as well as they could, therefore they're at fault somehow. I'm not saying that, because it's just not true for one thing. I mean, we don't know, you know, unless we're in that couple. And maybe we could say, if you're not conscious of it, you're fine. What you don't know won't hurt you. I mean, can we really say that? Like, if I were the man in that couple, let's say, and I'm 80 years old, and I've never really expressed myself because my creativity has been held back and everything, and I don't know that, I consider myself happy.
Yeah, it's great.
Is that a problem? I mean, I don't.
This is a great therapist. This is why you're such a great therapist. I need to refer more people to you. No, I think I'm like. No, but you know what it is, though? I think, like, you and I both do this a lot. Like, we're like subconsciously tilting at windmills. We're constantly nervous that they for like these views that we don't like. No, I think, like, what the reason that I went there in my mind was this rejection of polarity teachings as, like, being like, oh, it's something that, like, Andrew Tate does or something, right? And it's like, oh my God, you guys are like, the medicine is there, and you're like a baby spitting out the medicine, right? It's like, and what I think unconsciously I was trying to do with that comment was to be like, no one is trying to push polarity on you.
Right.
That's, by the way, which is in the shadow of the left.
And you know, that's absolutely right. I think that's really important to say that.
So, yeah, like, your point is absolutely fundamentally beautifully right. It's true. You may think that your relationship is going well, not realizing that you're missing a whole lot of deeper connection and love and witnessing there. If potentially, this kind of dynamic was to be resolved so that he could feel more potent in the relationship. But all I'm saying is that the whole point of, like, if it's working, you know, don't fix it, is nobody is trying, well, at least nobody, I'm not trying to shove this down anybody. It's not about an imperative. You don't need to do that if you don't want to. And now are people like Andrew Tate, who I don't even listen to, so I don't even know if this is what he does. If he's trying to, like, enforce that upon you, if he's trying to say that if you're not doing it this way, you're wrong, well, I got no time for that.
No, agreed. Agreed.
The left, you know, that's in their shadow, because they're the ones who are trying to enforce their opinions on other people, which is why they see it in other people and cry foul. Oh, you're trying to push your agenda down my throat. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are pushing their agenda down everyone's throat. Right. Now,
yeah, and there's a real fault in what I'm saying as well, because it does go back to the Ubermensch idea. There's a fault in saying there is a better than not. There is a better thing, and that may not be true. I mean, look at somebody who loses their legs, let's say in an accident, or were born with only arms and no legs, or whatever it might be. You know, are they doomed to live a lesser life? Is that something that they need to accept, that they're going to live a lesser life? Now that's an easier example, because there is nothing they can do to change that. Whereas somebody who is living a, say, diminished life, quote unquote, diminished, whatever that means, not a full life because of an archetypal, say, ignorance to it, or being in a partnership that essentially clamps that shut, does that mean that they can't live a full life? You know, Jordan Peterson is known for saying that if somebody doesn't have children, that they are going to live a less than life because they don't have children. And I don't know the exact quote, so you know, don't come after me for that.
I don't either.
Yeah, and it's like you go, well, what does that mean? Does that mean there's a list somewhere that says, oh, this is good, This is a full life. This isn't, you know, and
I don't need to defend him, but like as a father, I can tell you, like it's just like a non-negotiably true statement. If you don't have kids, you're missing something. Why are we even debating?
I didn't say that. You're definitely missing something. Yeah. But if I don't have $10 million in the bank, I'm missing something. Well, you know, if I'm
going with that, right?
Yeah, if I don't have the physical ability to be a champion athlete, I'm missing something.
If you don't own a Maserati, you're missing something. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Right. Of course we are.
You know, whatever, borscht, you're missing something. No, but I think what you're pointing at though is one of these really toxic frequencies in the masculine shadow, which is this compulsion toward better for its own sake. We just have it drive toward in capitalism, this concept of perpetual growth,
right?
The pathological drive toward perfectionism. That comes out of, for example, the scientific purview. It's very, very dark and poisonous shit. It's one of the reasons why capitalism, in the form that we are experiencing it mostly now, is causing so much damage. It's because it's driven by this shit. This like grow at all costs, better, more. Don't think about why. Just keep improving. So on the one hand, I mean, we need to find the balance, because yes, things could always be better, and we need the masculine drive to go out and do that, and the kind of hubristic Knight of Swords kind of energy in the adolescent masculine to go out and manifest it. But that's meaningless if it's not balanced with you're perfectly okay as you are. You know, the critique of contemporary therapy is that it's over feminized and it's like over, you know, sort of overly permissive, right? It's all about accepting you as you are.
Yeah, right, right.
That's true. But the problem is that like you need that balanced with get your shit together and push yourself and to transform and to rise yourself out of the diminished life that you're living. But you have to have both. You need them in fine balance. You can't have one.
Well, there's one other thing that my whole therapy paradigm sits on top of this.
Yeah.
It's if you have no unconscious complexes that are essentially false in their nature, like let's say you were attacked by a dog when you were 4, okay, and you've created a complex of dog fear. Okay, I'm using something really simplistic. And that dog fear has caused you as an adult never to be around a dog and never enjoy what it is that a dog can bring or a pet like that can bring to your life because of this false fear that's put into place, because it's bigger than what it would be in a normal sense of being afraid of a dog. You know, I mean, we all should be sort of afraid of wild animals or animals that we don't know about. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a false fear that was created in childhood. It was impressionable enough that it was put into the unconscious, where the conscious mind can't rationalize through it. Say, well, I was 4 years old and that dog was crazy, you know, blah, blah, blah. If you have that blocks you from becoming all that you could be, then that can be safely removed. That is not taking away something that is inherently you, that is truly you from your concept, from the point that you were born and whatever, that was not added to you falsely.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally
now, is that something that we can say, yeah, let's get rid of that because it's not real, it's unconscious, it's created in a false sense. Yeah. It was created at a vulnerable part of your life, usually, or if it's not a vulnerable part of your life, it's like an acute trauma, like being raped or being attacked or whatever. Can we remove that and say that it's safe to say that should not be there? And it is blocking you from being.
I would say you don't need that anymore. Is really the
you did at one time. You needed it at one time.
I would say this: your solution has become the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so when you recognize that the threat is no longer there, or the conditions are no longer there for you to protect yourself in that way, when you can tune in to the safety of your environment, oh, okay, I don't need to to go to such great lengths and rob myself of my aliveness, of my freedom, of the full spectrum living, then of course, But it's
now.
Go ahead. No, finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, if we move out of the practical life, the material cause and effect life, and move into the spiritual realm, we can say that any threat to our physical body is an illusion, because it does not, like if we're threatened physically, the physical threat does not mean the end of our being.
Yes.
And other than just from a practical point of view, not walking out in front of a bus, okay, which is a practical thing to say, well, I don't want to be dead. I want my body to continue to live. But if we have a fear that is not based on the truth, quote unquote, of eternal life, okay, through spiritual life, then that fear is also irrelevant. And
beautiful point. Look, always. Fear is always 100% guaranteed to be false evidence appearing real. Always, not sometimes. Always. It takes ego medicine, the transpersonal, to get you there. What do I mean by that? Oh my God, isn't it true that I'm tied to the train tracks and that I'm in this crushing dread because the train's coming toward me and I can't get out? And you point, yes, you're going to lose the human form, but why is that false evidence appearing real? Because your human form is actually an illusion, and that the soul exists beyond that. Now you might say, but isn't it real that I'm attached to my human soul? Yes, it's real. Yeah. Anytime that you hit, this is what I tell my clients all the time. Anytime that we hit paradox, you and I, we hit this, because it's wait. Are you saying that both things can be true? Yes.
Yeah. Right.
This is existential counseling at its finest. It's yes, right, and that's exactly where, to use a corny metaphor, where the rubber meets the road. And this is the thing too, where it's therapies always deal with what problems you can solve. Existential therapy or counseling is about you being in confrontation with, you being engaged with answers problems that can never be solved. Embodiment can never be solved. You're never going to solve the problem of I'm terribly vulnerable because I care so deeply about my existence that's predicated on a bag of blood flying through the sky. Right.
But I mean, it's like from a quantum perspective, it's like Schrodinger's cat. That it is that paradox. It's yes and no at the same time. It's we do have to, if we're going to live this game in a proper way, we have to have some belief that we should stay in material form, and we should protect our material body within reason. Otherwise we're not playing the game anymore. We might as well ascend into the spiritual state and be done with it, which I think some people do. I think that does happen.
What's that joke about God grant me redemption, just give me a minute? Because it's I do. I want enlightenment. I want to transcend the human form, but I'm also enjoying the fact that I have a body.
Yeah.
There's food and sex and excitement and risk.
I think that's important, though. I think that's the whole point.
But this is one of the things where I think the difference between Buddhism and its original kind of full spectrum experience in Hinduism differ, which is that there is this kind of drive toward a nihilistic, get me out of here, my hair is on fire, particularly in the Theravada traditions. But there's a vitalism that's a counter to that, which is no. I want to make the most of being in this perilous state of embodiment.
Exactly.
And that's vitalism. Exactly. And interestingly enough, I mean, people think that Nietzsche was the nihilist. No, he was the great critiquer of nihilists. He's a vitalist. Yeah. He's such a potent vitalist that you can't even take it. He's so full of life that he fucking imploded. You know, and a lot of the tantric traditions are the same way, where they're advocating for this kind of this full fucking phallic hard-on of an existence in life, where you're totally vulnerable and completely in that place of dangerous aliveness. You know? But I think in order for us to get to that place and not get pulled in to nihilism, you need that balance between the masculine and the feminine. And it's so funny how these little things that you would hear between a man and a woman in a couples counseling session, if you extrapolate them and pull them out, they're like the core of everything.
Yeah, they are. I know.
The minute that she gives you permission to provide, and that you're allowed to feel that rush, that phallic rush of the engorgement of your etheric phallus, because you can provide, you can penetrate, and it's appreciated, it's worshipped. It unlocks this, like,
oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing how that works, and it takes almost nothing to do it. It's like a gameplay that is so simple that it's like, and the opposite of that does the same thing in the opposite direction. That emasculation, essentially, that pulling away from that sense of providing, that sense of being there for a purpose and a meaning. It's so easy to take that away, as easy as it is. I mean, it's fascinating to sit with a couple where that part of it, obviously there are other issues, but that part of it is working really smoothly. It's like amazing to see the interplay between the two of them and how they play that. They're not conscious of playing a game, certainly, but they play it instinctually. It's naturally that they both do that with one another, and it just works like clockwork. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
just what you're saying.
Like the lucky doctor who gets to like find the thorn that's sort of like jammed in and pulls it out, and suddenly you have this rush of relief. You didn't even know the thing was sticking in you. You know.
Oh yeah. It's a good analogy.
Yeah. And it really does. But I think that if you even pull back further, like what you and I keep running into with these questions and these clips is about destigmatizing this stuff, because it's like, when God, isn't the devil just absolutely delighted when you go nowhere near the thing that's going to bring you the most fucking healing and liberation because you're terrified of it? Like, you go, oh, polarity teachings, oh, that's gross. Ew, that's like all these guys on the internet, fucking Jordan Peterson, who's a fucking asshole anyway. I'll just go nowhere near it. And the devil's like, yeah, thank God.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the one thing that the one medicine that you could receive that would burst you into an experience in life that you never even thought possible, to your point earlier. Yeah.
Well, what is that compulsion then? What is the compulsion to eat the apple? To be compelled by Satan and the evil? What is that built-in compulsion to do that? I mean, you can get,
but this is now really deep to Alan Watts, right? It's like, I don't know, there is no why. There's just forces of what's the opposite of antagonism? Protagonism and antagonism. That's the sort of the hermetic kind of level of sort of dance between opposites, right? What is the devil? When I say the devil, I don't, of course, I hope viewers don't think I'm referring to some, red guy with a pitch, tail and a fork.
Well, you might as well be.
The forces of antagonism. I mean, the collective force out there that is summoned when you move towards something that's going to liberate and it's going to create, right? And you can call it anything you want. I mean,
well, I think that goes
resistance.
I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about this desire to believe that the material is the end all. It's like we have such a huge reason to believe that, because we're living it, we're feeling it, it feels like reality. So anything that comes along that makes us wonder if that's really true reality, we're going to resist it, because it means it isn't. And everything we know is then thrown to the wind, because everything we know is material, cause and effect. And of course, the whole drive in today's culture of making science a religion with scientism and cause and effect is the only reality there is. Spirituality doesn't exist. Metaphysics doesn't exist. Whatever. So we're even more compelled to stick with it, because we're told if we don't, we're science deniers, we're conspiracists.
Isn't it funny though, that they're like totally right, and yet they're just missing the other half? Look at Dostoevsky, for example, right? Dostoevsky has this way of creating a spiritual level of experiencing the material world that doesn't need to transcend the laws of chemistry and physics. This is
No, it doesn't.
the candle in the end of Brothers Karamazov, for those of you who read. And you know, he the challenge that he brings is you don't need anything mystical in order for things to be infinitely mysterious and big. The material world is infinitely big enough and they can hold us. And I think that that's actually true. But as within, so without. So it's like if you look totally in, it's like with the quantum thing. You look all the way in, deep into the tiniest little thing. You see exactly the same thing as that you do if you go out into the stars. And to say that like, oh, well, quantum physics is wrong because it's not taking into consideration. It's like they're both right. And in fact, actually, and I think this is the challenge of Dostoevsky, it doesn't fucking matter whether or not you believe in an external God or an internal God, that it's all in the material or that it's all in the etheric. What does it matter? It's the road that leads to the same thing. Now,
right.
I know I'm getting like way.
No, it's okay.
But you see my point though, which is that like the scientific purview is totally fucking right. It's just like 50% right.
Right.
Here we are in paradox again.
No, and that's putting it into a metric, 50%. It is, and this is something that's always fascinated me. What difference does it make if whatever you want to call it, ethereal, spiritual, metaphysics, whatever you want to call it, is incorporated in the theory of everything? What difference does it make? What does it threaten? You know, to that. I mean, that's the reason why scientism is a religion, because I mean, at the height of it, with whoever is manipulating all of this and saying this is the way it is, you know, scientists, governments, whatever.
Right.
It's like, what is it that it threatens? And this is the other thing that we would add to it, the other 50%. Why is that such a threat to the things that do exist? You know, we know cause and effect is real. We know that it is real within its limited scope of things, but we know that, you know, if you pick this up and throw it, it will move through the air in a particular way or whatever. We know these things. How does metaphysics threaten that?
Well, that's the point, right? Is that it doesn't, and that
no.
The full, you know, the full picture becomes visible once you recognize that metaphysics isn't a diminishment of the scientific, and the scientific isn't a diminishment of the metaphysical, and that the masculine isn't a diminishment. That this is a big one, yeah. That the masculine does not diminish the feminine, and the feminine does not diminish the masculine. In fact,
yeah, I like the way you brought that back together. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
You want the whooshing up of the two. You know, people often I have like they them pronouns in my bio, and people will be like, oh, you know, what are you like some, and I'm like, gender transcendence is the belief that like the two converge in their fullness. That true, like, why is it that you know that things become in the non-dual realm this sort of androgynous thing? And it's because it's the fullness of both. Because it's not about this like one or the other or neither. Like non-binary seems like the weirdest thing to say. Forgive me to all the non-binary people in the world, but like your whole existence is predicated on something that you are not. Your existence is via negativa.
Right.
I'm not binary, as opposed to the fullness of the binary creates the transcendence that is the same fucking thing. Yeah. You don't need to present, you don't need to wear culturally masculine clothes or culturally feminine clothes, because all that's nonsense. It's just thinking of it from the plenum or the void. Because plenum and void is the same fucking thing.
What is the purpose behind that then? What is the purpose behind claiming you're non-binary and not wanting to accept, quote unquote, you know, dangerous word, I know, not wanting to accept your biological assignment at birth? What is the incentive behind that, the compulsion behind that?
The willful
Is it
freedom.
driven by the culture? Is it a social contagion, as so many people say it is? Or is there something going on that's deeper than that? This feeling of not accepting anything that is binary in some way, is a black and white, is a material presentation, because materiality is all about polarity. It's all about plus minus. I mean, if you narrow it all the way down to the actual, particle, it has a polarity of either one or the other, and it flips around. And that's what everything is, material. It's all about that. Is it a deep, maybe a metaphysical, spiritual position of saying, I'm not anything? I am not a material thing at all?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
my
that's,
unconditional commitment is toward freedom in all of its inflections.
yeah,
And,
right.
and that's why I
Right.
gravitate toward liberation theologies, and because I think what's behind that is always a will toward freedom. And this is what
Sure.
Kierkegaard's point, and maybe this is apocryphal to all you Kierkegaard nerds, but I'm pretty sure what he said was, God has given you the gift of the capacity to transcend, and don't you dare squander the gift. So it's like,
Transcend what?
to
Transcend
transcend
what?
anything.
Okay.
And so that will is in us. It's the will of the divine within to say, I don't need to follow these rules. I can
Right.
express the freedom that I've been given. You can look at it from a political perspective too, right? I mean, people fought and died for your right to go and say, I'm non-binary, I'm this and I'm that. Blood was shed for you to be
Yeah,
able
well, there's a difference though, and this is the argument. It's that
to.
if you are non-binary, why do you have to choose a pronoun, say, for example? Why is it that you have to be accepted as something that you're materially not? Why do you go the trouble to have, beta puberty blocking drugs or surgery or whatever? Because you're just moving from one material non-freedom to another. So there's a strange thing that goes on in there, rather than just saying, hey, I'm anything. I don't care what you call me. You can call me he, she, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. I go whatever route I feel like. I think that's kind of how it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer in, like, your freedom ends where mine begins. So I don't really care why people do what they do. It's like, if you want to, if calling yourself non-binary feels good to you, and it does something, it kind of it's an, maybe, my perspective is that it gives you a sense of your own freedom, that you're no longer, you don't have to be kind of beholden to any cultural norms or whatever. Go with God. Why do people do? Is it a cultural contagion? Probably. Isn't everything, even like spirituality is like a cultural contagion. It's hip.
Oh, of course it is. Of course, everything is. I think where I would agree with you. I mean, I don't give a crap what people do or what they believe about themselves, just like you said, as long as it doesn't impact me in a really radical way. I mean, it can impact me.
It doesn't
Sure.
restrict my freedom.
Yeah. But I'm not a real fan at all of what they're doing to kids and young people. I do think if you're young, you should be exposed to that kind of thing.
Isn't it logical? You can't
Is
get
it
a
what?
tattoo unless you're 18, because it's permanent, and you can't. You really want a fucking yin yang, on your forearm. Come on, maybe wait until you're 18 to make that decision, or you're on your forehead.
A swastika right here,
Like, you don't quite realize before you're arbitrary age, but a certain maturity before you realize the true depth of the implications of your choices.
And it's also it's the social contagion that causes that. So it isn't a natural desire. I want a tattoo because it just came to me in a dream.
But it's also look, you can't, consent is a funny thing, at a certain point. It's either 18, 16, whatever it may be. But you can't, we have to at a certain point say, you don't really know the implications of consenting to sexual contact with a person before a certain level of maturity. And you also can't drive a car because there's a lot of responsibility. You also can't go and die for your country. But change your gender? Yeah, go ahead. And in fact, if anyone wants to tell you that you shouldn't do that, they're a fucking bigot.
Oh, well, yeah, you're getting into the main problem here. It isn't about it isn't about individual freedoms or individual whatever. It is about those things. And I think even having physical, I mean, talk about cutting the tether and the helium balloon going off. I mean, I don't think you should be mutilating your body in order to fit some psychological belief that you're something that you're not. I'll get in big trouble for that. I know, for making that statement, something that you're not. I mean, we are all things we're not. I mean, if you get down to it, we all have personalities, we all have beliefs, we all have things within ourselves that are not necessarily naturally produced. They're produced through experience, they're produced through, you know, what we believe and what we've encountered in our life. But I do, going back to what I said earlier with these complexes, I mean, I do believe that a lot of people that are taking these actions to radically change their body, even though they technically have the right to do that, they're doing it based on something that I believe is unconscious.
Well, I don't even know that they have the right. I mean, it's not consistent legally. What I'm trying to point to here is that it's inconsistent from a legal perspective. You know, I think this is something interesting to me, because it's like, I don't know why this is fucking radical. Integrity means that you stick with what you believe. Like, you know, I was talking about Charles Eisenstein somebody recently, and it's like, how can you justify this person who now is connected with RFK, and RFK, you know, went over to Trump, and I'm like, well, because it's perfectly consistent with the values that I grew up on, which is that I refuse to hate and demonize people who I disagree with. Right. Just because you do things differently doesn't mean that I hate you, reject you, slander you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know why? Yeah. Because I grew up around when that was happening to gay people. Right. And I was taught, no, just because you're not gay doesn't mean that you get to be and disgusted with them and reject it. No, you have to open your mind and open your heart and allow people to be who they are. Why does that not apply to Republicans?
Right. Right.
And, you know, I was saying earlier too, did anyone actually think that we were going to get anywhere with partisan politics? And then finally there's someone that goes, you know what? These people that my camp have decided are fascists and blah, 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 blah. I'm not playing that game. I don't agree with them. RFK's policies are not consistent with Trump policies. But he goes, I'm willing to go and listen and to work with them and to accept that they may know something that I don't, or that our capacity to work together might create collective good.
Right.
How is that fucking radical?
Right.
That's like the most old school leftist, love your neighbor, you know, don't reject people because they're not like you thinking. So when it comes to this whole thing about gender affirming care, I'm a strong believer that that it takes a certain level of maturity to take on responsibilities, to be able to truly be able to accept the consequences of your choices. Now, why would that be any different? Now, here's another point for you. I'm a very democratic person. So if there's a group of people somewhere in some state, in some province, who've collectively decided that a vast majority of them, or a majority of them, all agree that they would like to make that legal, or that they would like to make that illegal, as a person who believes in democracy, I go, that's what democracy is. You do what you're going to do based on the consensus, and I'll do what I do. And by the way, if I lose consensus, if I'm in that state where they all agree that, I don't know, we should get rid of abortion, I have to bite the bullet and go, okay, hey, I disagree. But I'm actually a Democrat, so I'm not gonna try and burn down.
What if they all voted to have your left arm removed? Would you be okay with that? Because it's consensus. But again, you
dropped me in the same thing. Someone was saying that thing about like, oh, do you think that it's okay to force people to, and they're baiting this person into the argument about, oh, do you think it's okay to like force people to bake a cake for a gay wedding if you're a Christian? And they're like, oh, but you know what would drive me crazy about that? And I'm like, wait a minute, why does it cut? Because the next line should be, oh, do you think affirmative action is okay? Because it's like, oh, wait a minute, now your argument fell apart. Because before it's like, no, of course, you just baited me into this thing where I'm now agreeing that it's wrong to force hosting a gay wedding in a church. That should be the full monopoly of violence should come down on that person's head. But we did that in affirmative action.
Right.
Right. You got me. Because it's like, but now is it a matter of
So we're
Maybe
moving
that's
into
what we're
we're moving into paradox. Yeah, we're moving into the gray area
Here's another
of all of these things, which is great. Yeah.
But what if, and this is going to get me in trouble, what if it's true? What if using the state monopoly on violence to enforce integration was actually a mistake? That what we needed to do was to leave it alone and to let integration naturally come, however it did, however long it took, how much suffering had to happen for people of color in the United States. Because what you get to on the other end is a natural evolution toward integration, not one that's forced by state violence. Now, I don't know that that's true, and I don't think anyone could ever know. How could you possibly know? But it's interesting to think, like, Jesus, I wonder if that's fucking true. What if it was what if true libertarianism prevailed during Jim Crow, and the government didn't force schools?
I think over time, if I stick to what I believe about the true nature, the fundamental nature of human beings as being Christ-like, I think over time it would. I think it'd take a long time though. And I think
how much suffering do people?
Well, exactly. I think
laws before,
I think the biggest price we pay for forcing it is that there isn't a really clear line as to where that is okay and where it isn't. Like what's going on now with the whole DEI thing, and I mean, all the racist stuff and everything, white people being required at universities to stand up in front of the whole faculty and saying, I am a racist, whatever.
Like the Nazis
the
Nazis did that.
What? I am a racist?
No. That's I think that's what closed the Bauhaus. You know the Bauhaus, that great art school in Germany?
Yeah.
Said to the faculty, you got to pledge an allegiance to the Third Reich.
Sure.
Because they're all artists and weirdos and freaks. They're like, fuck off, we're not doing that. And they all went to the States. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, anyway, we got to stop. We're over time. Great stuff. Thank you.
We start with this like sort of.
I know. Well, that's the whole point, isn't it?
The trouble with couples. Before I know it, we're in the fucking ether. We're in history, quantum physics, and Hitler, and. Right.
Well, I hope people can get something from it. But anyway, it's good.
Instead of ManTalk, man muse. We just muse.
Yeah. Well, ManTalk maybe not the right thing. Except we're both men, so we'd have to bring in a feminine guest at some point.
Gender transcendent, Todd. How dare you, Mr.
Yeah, right. Well, I said feminine. I didn't say woman. It could be a man. That's fine. Anyhow,
hate me or love me. Send us feedback. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm open to hearing it.
Yep. Same thing here. Please comment. Join, subscribe, do all those things. We would appreciate it. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you the next time.